Marco Rubio takes a very radically different path to solving this. We believe that it's the opposite of bigger government. Smaller government will get rid of corruption. Bigger government, all it does is remove the middle guy, much like you guys want to help. But what bigger government does is it removes the little guy from having any influence and makes it into a corporate system, much like the very Nordic nations you guys want to mimic here. What Marco Rubio would like to do is limit the role of government by removing excessive regulations and excessive taxation and enabling the average American to take control of his or her life. That right there is true progressivism.
On top of that, she's going to go after Wall Street, which has the most influence on Capitol Hill too. She, unlike Marco Rubio, who wants to cut taxes for the very rich and give them more ability to regulate our Congress, she wants to tax the rich and make sure Wall Street, along with the rich, are held accountable too. So there is political corruption on Congress, and there's political corruption on both sides of the aisle too. So we're not denying that. We are saying is that Hillary Clinton is going to push for reforms that are going to make sure to keep the role of money as low as possible.
And if I can add something, Glass-Steagall is not going to give any solutions. Basically, if you don't know Glass-Steagall, you pretty much merge a commercial and an investment bank. But the 2008-2009 recession was a byproduct of subprime mortgages. Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, those are investment banks. Wachovia, subprime mortgages. I don't really understand how Glass-Steagall would really make a difference.
This is what libertarians' main enemy is. I mean, this is like the definition of crony capitalism. The idea that corporations are buying our government. This is not fair, and this is what Rand Paul is doing everything he can to stop. And his solution is quite simple. He even said on his exact words, he wants government so small that you can barely see it. The solution is not to make government larger, but to make government smaller, because the larger government is, the more corruption there is.
In regards to deregulation of U.S. government, Bernie Sanders and we would personally perceive this as a gateway to, well, basically the gateway to corruption. If there's less control, there's less checks and balances, bouncing one off another, then that just leads to more openings, more loopholes within the system where people can just place money for their own special interests or give benefits or favors to anyone that so lines their pockets. Right? States, if we lead to deregulation of our government, then that would just lead to states acting on their own, regulating themselves, and that would lead to disaster. They would be flaunting around almost like warlords and just going after their own special interests. Right. Just an example that I can give, a few years ago, the CDC was regulating themselves, and they came across, I'm sorry, speaking to the phone. Inspectors came across so many different health violations that they were all,
But this is exactly what the world of campaign finance was like before Citizens United. Because right now we have super PACs, which, they flood a lot of money into the public elections. But before, it was basically that the incumbents would dominate elections and funding because they would already have all the influence. Whereas now, you could also have challengers that have their own money, and as a result, it will lead to more competitive elections. And also, with the new system, the fundraising is much more transparent.
Thank you, college Republicans. That's the end of your time.
I think it's funny that Barack Obama likes to get on there and lecture us, Americans, law-abiding American citizens, on how to buy and sell guns when his administration is turning around and selling guns to Syrian rebels. 1 in 3 Syrian rebels turned out to have terrorist ideology. That is not fair. Also, Barack Obama's drone program has murdered 10 times more people than George W. Bush. That is something to take into consideration when looking at executive orders. We have to understand, even if you favor this law, think about the precedent that it sets. Think about the future presidents that you may not like that will make these laws into action without your representation. It is not fair to the American people.
Excuse me, but the question also is asking you to say what is the issue that your candidate considers issuing an executive order on?
I'm sorry, you mean Well, the whole issuing an executive order on immigration, declaring war on ISIS, all these are executive orders that were appointed to the by the Constitution to Congress and not to the executive branch. I'm sorry, does that
I'm
answer
sorry,
your
Mr.
question?
Walker, the question was what would your candidate issue as an executive order if he
Oh,
were
what
president?
okay, I'm sorry. What would he issue as an executive order? Things that are already laws, things that have already been put into place. He cannot issue an executive order that legislates. So generally speaking, that means a lot of things, but I won't go into the details of that.
Wall Street was responsible of millions of jobs being lost, millions of houses being lost. They're responsible for the great inequality that this country faces. So I think that Obama, as much as he's wonderful stuff that he's done, he hasn't gone far enough. And should have been way stronger against Wall Street, who is the most horrible people on one of the most.
And if I can add to that, I don't think it's necessarily that it's a bad thing, this administration. I think it's more, you can only tackle on so much. But under the Obama administration, we have perhaps the strongest United States economy we've ever seen. We have almost the entire GDP of the entire European Union. He passed universal health care. How many presidents before him have tried to pass that? Many. They've all failed, but Obama did it. And I think he's actually the best president we've had since FDR. Thank you.
All right. In regards to the comment about Wall Street, I find it very interesting how far former Secretary Clinton has gone to reform Wall Street, considering that they are one of the prime backers of her entire campaign. And from what I understand, Senator Sanders, aside from climate change, that's one of his main foundations is tackling income inequality and reforming Wall Street. He's explicitly said if a bank is too big to fail, then it's too big, period. We need to break up the banks and provide further regulation towards Wall Street. And finally, jail the corrupt CEOs as well as bankers and CPAs, everything that involved with the economic recession of 2008.
What has Bernie actually done besides shouting? I know he likes to tell Hillary, oh, you were just shouting and you haven't done anything for gun control. But what has he done? He's only sponsored 3 bills, and they've done absolutely nothing. Hillary was a co-sponsor for a home foreclosure bill. And I really, all I want to see is action, because all I hear is words and words and words and words, but no action. So what has Bernie actually done? Thank you.
You get a chance to respond to that?